Welcome back. Let's start off with the MCQs straight away.
Question number 1. Time taken for the first unit was 100 hours. Time taken for the second unit was 80 hours. What is the learning rate? Now, most students make a mistake and say that it is 80% just because the time of the second unit is 80 hours. Well, the learning rate is not 80%. What is given in the question? The information that is given in the question is the incremental time for the first unit and the incremental time for the second unit. It is not the cumulative average time that is being given in the question. The incremental time is the time that is taken for making each individual unit. That is what is given. So we will make a table. Incremental time for the first unit is 100 hours and incremental time for the second unit is 80 hours. Now we have to calculate the cumulative average time. Now, if incremental time of the first unit is 100 hours, then definitely the cumulative average time and total time will also be 100 hours. And as for the second unit, if the incremental time is 80 hours, then the total time after completing the two units is 100 plus 80, which is 180 hours. And the cumulative average time after the completion of two units is 180 divided by 2 or 90 hours, which means that when the units jumped from 1 to 2, that is when it doubled, the cumulative average time dropped from 100 to 90 hours, which means that the learning rate is 90 divided by 100. That's what I've written here, or it is 0.9 or 90%. So the right answer is option B. Question number 2, time taken to produce the first batch of 20 units was 575 hours. First batch. I told you whenever batch is mentioned in the question, the learning effect is taking place when the batch gets doubled and not when the units are doubled. Total time for the first 16 batches of 20 units was 5,600 hours. What is the learning rate to the nearest percentage? So since the units are not relevant, I will just cancel out those units part because we do not need that information to work out the answer. In the previous class, I told you whenever learning rate is missing in the question or you are asked to find out the learning rate, then the formula to be adopted is cumulative average time y is equal to AR the whole raised to n, where A is the time of the first unit, in this particular case, the first batch, because batch is given in the question. N is the number of times the output has doubled and R is the learning rate. R is what you have to find out. So in this particular case, we know that A is 575 hours. That is the time taken for the first batch. And we also know the total time for the 16 batches. What is the total time for 16 batches? It is 5,600 hours. But in our formula, it is not total time which is given, but the cumulative average time. So we have to first find out the cumulative average time for the 16 batches. How do we find that out? Cumulative average time for 16 batches is the total time for 16 batches divided by 16. Only then you get the cumulative average time. So it is 5,600 that's coming from here divided by 16, which gives a cumulative average time of 350 hours. So now we have got the left-hand side of the equation. And now when we have produced 16 batches, how many times did the batches double? It has doubled 4 times, from 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16. So 4 times the batches is doubled, which means that the number of times the output has doubled, or the number of times, in this case, the batches have doubled is 4, which means that N is equal to 4. Now we've got all the information to get the value of R. So coming back to the equation, cumulative average time is given by y is equal to AR the whole raised to n. Y is equal to 350, that's coming from here. A is 575, that's coming from here. R is unknown, so I've written R here. And N is 4. Now solving this equation, 350 divided by 575 is equal to R raised to 4. 0.609 is equal to R raised to 4. And when you take the exponent 4 to the other side of the equation, what happens? It's 0.609 raised to 1 by 4. Hence 0.609, the whole raised to 1 by 4 is equal to R. And what is 1 by 4 equal to? 1 by 4 is nothing but 0.25. So 0.609, the whole raised to 0.25 is equal to R. So now we have to just resort to the scientific calculator and get the figure. What is R? It's 0.609, the whole raised to 0.25. 0.609, the whole raised to 0.25 gives an amount of 0.8833. So we need just 2 decimal places for the learning rate. So it is 0.88 or 88%. So we write the final answer. Learning rate is 88%. Question number 3. Time taken to produce the first batch of 50 units was 400 hours. So that is A. But the labor budget is subject to a learning effect. The learning rate is 90%. The labor rate is $12 per hour. An order for 600 units was completed, but it has now received a second order for another 800 units. B has to be taken at negative 0.152. So we didn't calculate B since they've already given the value of B. What is the labor cost for the second order to the nearest dollar? Now, one of the striking features of this question is labor rate is given at $12 per hour. And we are asked to find out the labor cost for the second order. So how can we tackle such kind of questions? Now, we know that the labor cost is always equal to the labor time for the second order multiplied by the direct labor rate. And we know that the rate is $12 per hour. So first we have to find out the labor time for the second order. And what do you mean by the labor time for the second order? That is nothing but the incremental time for the second order. Incremental time for the second order is the total time for the second order minus the total time for the first order. So let me draw the table for you. So we want to find out the total time of the second order minus the total time of the first order. And then you multiply it with the direct labor rate per hour to get the labor cost for the second order. So in the question, they have specified that each batch comprises of 50 units. So let's make a note of it. And since it is batch which is given in the question, we will cancel out the units portion. Now, for the first batch, what is the time taken? The time taken is 400 hours. So we make a note of it in the cumulative average time, the total time and the incremental time. Now we know that the first order was for 600 units. For making 600 units, how many batches are required? So for the first order, the number of batches which is required is 600. That is the total number of units that is produced for the first order divided by 50 units. That is the units per batch. So we will get the number of batches. So which means that for the first order, 12 batches had to be produced. Only then we will get a total quantity of 600 units. Now the second order is for 800 units, which means that additionally, how many batches have to be produced? So for the second order, it's again 800 divided by 50. 50 is nothing but the units that are produced per batch. So we get 16 batches. So if we produce another 16 batches, then we will get a total of 800 units, which means that as a total, we have produced already 12 batches. Plus for the second order, if we are going to produce 16 batches, what is the total number of batches that we would have produced? It is 12 plus 16 or 28 batches. So now we got the number of batches that will be completed after the second order and the number of batches that will be completed after the first order. And what are we supposed to find out? The total time taken after the second order minus the total time taken after the first order. Only then we will get the incremental time of the second order. That is what we have to find out. And after that, we have to multiply that with the labor rate of $12 to get the labor cost for the second order. So now, in order to find out the total time, what is the first thing that we need? We definitely need the cumulative average time, correct? So cumulative average time after the 28th batch, we will write the formula first. Y is equal to AX, the whole raised to B, where A is the time taken for the first unit or the first batch. Okay, in this case, it's the batch. Now, what is A? A is 400 hours. And what is X? X is 28. And what is B? B is negative 0.152. So substituting those figures in the formula, we get 400 into 28, the whole raised to negative 0.152. Solving it in the scientific calculator, we get the answer as 241.0416 hours. Ideally, you take 4 decimal places because we don't want to make a mistake in the rounding off. So we will fill that up in the cumulative average time column, 241.0416. Now it is very easy to find out the total time. What is the total time? Total time is always CAT, the cumulative average time, multiplied by batches. So total time after the 28th batch, it is 241.0416, that is this, multiplied by 28, that is this. So we get the total time as 6749.1648, and we fill it in a table. Now we know the total time that has been taken after 28 batches has been produced. So next, what is to be found out? The total time after 12 batches were produced. Now to work out the total time that is taken after producing 12 batches, we first need the cumulative average time for the 12 batches. So cumulative average time after the 12th batch, again given by the formula y is equal to ax, the whole raised to b, where a is the time taken for the first batch. So here a is 400, x is 12, and b is again negative 0.152. So substituting those figures in the formula, we get y is equal to 400 into 12, the whole raised to negative 0.152. Solving, we get the answer as 274.1728 hours. We write that in our table. Now it is very easy to find out the total time. How do we find out the total time? It's just 274.1728, which is the cumulative average time multiplied by 12. That is a number of batches. So total time after the 12th batch, it's 274.1728, that's coming from here, multiplied by 12, that's coming from here. So we get the total time as 3290.0736. So we fill that in the total time column. Now it is very easy to find out the incremental time for the second order. That is this slot. So what is the incremental time? It is the total time taken after the second order minus the total time taken after the first order. So we make a note of it. Incremental time is given by 6749.1648 minus 3290.0736, which gives an amount of 3459.0912 hours. But this is given in hours. What do we need? We want the incremental labor cost. We don't need the incremental time. So how do we find out the incremental labor costs for the second order? Simple, just multiply it with the labor rate of $12 per hour. So incremental labor cost for the second order is 3459.0912 hours multiplied by $12 per hour. So we get the incremental labor cost for the second order as $41,509.09. Question number 4, the time taken to produce each of the first 4 batches of a new product were. So since they have said each of the first 4 batches, this is nothing but the incremental time. So the incremental time of the 4 batches have been given. What is the rate of learning? So we will make a table. So I told you earlier, whenever we have to find out the rate of learning, the formula that has to be applied is cumulative average time of y is equal to AR the whole raised to n, where A is the time taken for the first batch, which means that it is 100, and R is unknown, so we don't know it. And N is the number of times that the output has doubled. How many times did the output double? Once, twice. So N will be equal to 2. And what about the cumulative average time y? How can we find out the cumulative average time? That is this one. So what is the total time? The total time is the total of all these 4. So the total time is 284. And what is the cumulative average time? That's the total time divided by 4. So it amounts to 71 minutes. Now substituting those figures in the formula, we get it is 71 that's coming from here. 100, that's the time taken for the first unit that's coming from here. R is unknown, and 2, we already saw it is the number of times the output has doubled. That's from 1 to 2 and 2 to 4. Twice the output has doubled. Solving this, we get R is equal to 84.3%. Now, one of the doubts that students ask in this question is. Now look carefully into the table. What I have done is I have just filled in the missing figures with the help of the incremental time of each row. What is the learning rate when the output doubled once? It's 85%, that is 85 divided by 100. And when it doubled twice, that is from 2 to 4, then the learning rate changed. It changed to 83.53%, that is 71 divided by 85, which means that the learning rate has changed. And what is the answer that we got? We got an answer of 84.3%, which is not the learning rate of either the first one or the second one. What in the world answer did we just get? To give clarity from where we got the figure, it is nothing but the average learning rate. If you take 85, that's the first learning rate, plus the second learning rate, that's 83.53, divided by 2. That is, we are just calculating the average. We get 84.3, which is the learning rate that we have got as the answer. So what I want to say is, whenever learning rate is asked in the question, please adopt this formula and take the cumulative average time of the last batch for this calculation, or you will go wrong. Because in this particular question, there are 2 learning rates, and the right answer is the average of the 2 learning rates.
So here we come to an end of today's session. I hope the concepts of learning curve is clear for you people. If you have any doubts, do post it in the comment box below.